talk a little bit about hopelessness. Let's talk a little bit about the disease that it is for your consciousness, for the root philosophy of life that it's coming from, and the fact that it leads into physical disease at some point and why. Those physical diseases will manifest after mental disease has already manifested. Mental disease being as common as it is on this planet, and I don't mean the ones that just get diagnosed and treated with drugs, because actually the people labeled as mental disease really don't have any more mental illness than most of what's considered normal. It's just a little less common, and it doesn't fit into the system quite as well. But outside of labels and all the nonsense, a root philosophy of life that lends itself to hopelessness, without going too deep, because people are not yet, for the most part, perceiving what I even am referring to when I say root philosophy of life. Let's look into the psychology level of it. It's shallower, easier to see. Might be helpful. People cite their reason or excuse for hopelessness being about people in this world, how people are, where humanity's headed, therefore, and how depressing and hopeless it is. Okay, so in most cases, one hasn't even taken the time to look at the patterns and understand why they see it that way. When you spend your time watching the beast system news, which feeds the matrix, which has you helping to manifest this misery, you get all these ideas that the other people out there, they're the problem. Depending on which thought group you've herded yourself into so that you can collectively hate or judge someone else, or maybe you feel alone and it's just you against the world. But you're looking out there thinking, those bad people and these bad people and humans are so stupid and whatever else. And it's so hopeless, humanity's circling the drain. Religions do this, the public news does this, all the institutions do this, because they're all controlled by the same thing. And when you agree to that, by conforming, by watching and being discouraged like you're supposed to, you feel it, you're part of it. At the same time you're sitting there in your intellectual tower of mental superiority saying the world is hopeless because people suck, even if you're judging yourself while you're judging everybody else, this is still an ego trip. It's still up in the ivory tower of your head, disconnected from heart, disconnected from all intuition and other senses, founded in a destructive root philosophy of life. But we got to start somewhere with sovereignty. If people are ever going to rewrite their root philosophies of life, we have to start somewhere. If the only place humanity currently lives is in their head, then we got to start there, I guess. Do you realize that as you're sitting there saying that, about how those people out there make the world hopeless, all those people out there that are also being fed the same fail root philosophy from the institutions around the world, whatever language, whatever news broadcasting, whatever religious cult they happen to be born into and washed into and subscribed to, they're looking out and projecting and thinking the same thing about you. Not specifically you in most cases, unless you're a known name and everybody projects extra at that name or image, but many people are just hiding. So you're a number, you're a statistic in their mind, just like they are in yours. Just some random person that's part of the problem. Excuse me. Clearing the frogs out of my throat this morning. So you're participating in the very same thing you're judging. You are part of it. You've done nothing about it but go along with it and conform to it. You are being used as an energy source in a matrix that keeps consciousness low for humanity. You are using your free will to give up your free will, to give your coin away and say, I'm too afraid to use my consciousness for anything. Let me just give it to whoever's the first taker. And on this planet, everything's set up to take it. Everything from the darkness, that is. And the light doesn't interact with that. The light doesn't interact with your victim mentality, your hopelessness. It doesn't interfere. In fact, until you're ready to step up and start becoming what it is you perceive as missing in this world, the light's not going to interact with you on any of this. So in your complacency, you're agreeing to be part of it while simultaneously judging humanity as being a big failure. Perhaps if you had the eyes of compassion, if you were developed that way spiritually, you would understand that all those blind people out there think the same thing about you. And instead of judging them for it, being that you've made the same mistake, you could start to see it with empathy. And then you might be ready, you might be getting ready to become part of the solution instead of just part of the problem. But you can't do it if you're still judging yourself. Oh, why did I waste my life being a victim? Oh, wait, why did I waste my life being complacent, making pointless comparisons to things the TV told me to care about? If you're still breathing, you haven't wasted your life. You're still here. Now, being that technically, theoretically, on any given day, that could be over, ask yourself this. A life sitting around on Earth, which you knew was temporary, looking around saying, oh, humans are hopeless. Oh, poor me. I have no energy to do anything because now I'm hopeless. The second you cross over, do you think that will have been a wise investment with what you did with your consciousness? You move back into the eternal realm. Do you think you're going to be glad? You sat around on your armchair saying this species is hopeless. Do you think that's what you came for? People love to put somebody else on a pedestal and put all the problems on them. Some people think a politician can fix this. Other people think a mystical figure can fix this, or someone they've deified. Meanwhile, you're waiting and wasting your life and blaming everyone else, perhaps yourself, that the species is hopeless. You are feeding a root philosophy of life that will kill you, slowly or in some cases more quickly, and does no good for anyone and contributes to the energetic matrix keeping everyone so dim and unconscious. Some of you say, I didn't have a good father figure. Well, no kidding. How many people do you think did on this planet? Some of you say, we don't have good leaders. I don't know truth. I'm confused. And all day you're taking in confusing, unhealthy things that are upsetting you because you're addicted to outrage that you absorb through blue light devices. Continuously agreeing to one thing while complaining about it and saying it ain't right. Humanity's hopeless. Do you see the futility of this loop, this little hamster wheel the darkness gets people on? Now, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. I mean, it's profound. I guess when you fast for weeks and weeks in a cage in front of everybody, you have time to ponder the simple truth of things and say it, and hopefully somebody writes some of it down. That's the problem. People write things down. They intellectually agree with things, and they never ground it into anything deeper that means anything. That's the problem with living in your head, cut off from what you really are. You'll never do anything with it. You'll just kick it around in your own echo chamber, have some thoughts, tell yourself that I believe things that are more accurate than what others believe, and apparently that's the meaning of life, but it's not. I don't care what you say you believe. Are you the change you want to see? If you tell me the biggest problem in your life was you didn't have a real father figure, what do you think? If you recognize that, if that stands out strongly to you, if that slapped you real hard on both cheeks, what does that mean about you? Poor you? That's it? I'm just going to be dysfunctional and it's all the fault of the father I didn't have? Dig a little deeper. That's looking at it through darkness so you can remain blind. Shine a little light on it. What's it actually mean about you? Hopefully some of you are going to guess this before I go ahead and say it. When you look into this world, whatever stands out to you as missing or lacking or done wrong, what does that mean about your soul? What is one of the things you are obviously here to be? And how could you ever grow into that, grow as a soul and a spirit, and the whole point of life and incarnating in the first place, if there wasn't a lack of it for you to see? So while from the mortal, helpless, broken matrix philosophy of life generating sorrow that you're living in, the very same thing that you look at from the dark ignorant side of the coin as poor me, everything's hopeless, woe unto the world, yada yada. What's the other side of the coin? What's the light say? This is your grand opportunity. Hello, spirit. Do you actually want to grow like you came here to do? Or do you want to make excuses and regret that you copped out when you cross over? From a spiritual plane of existence, when you look at this, you get absolutely excited at how much light you can be to a world this dark and ignorant. And then you get here and you get put into the genetics of something between an angel and an animal, which has its own flaws and its own compounding of sin or mistakes, if you will, and tendencies built right into it. And you struggle with that. And because of the brain chemistry of the human organism that's been stuck in slave consciousness and victim mentality, perpetrating evil or being the victims of it for way too long, you succumb. You succumb to something that when you saw it from a higher spiritual perspective, you knew you had the strength not to succumb to. That's why you came. You knew you would see. You knew that you were setting up a life. You were a beam of light approaching this earth at the exact time and angle necessary to set up the circumstances that you could be the light unto the darkness. Once in a while, someone actually does it, and then the world gets all confused. Puts them on a pedestal, later blood sacrifices them, and then when they're done fearing them, later they start recreating stories about them, and the game of telephone goes crazy, and everybody's nuts, and nobody knows anything. But that's not what you're here for. I submit to you that your hopeless philosophy of life tells you the truth, but it tells you from the opposite of truth perspective. If you can find the grand oracle within you, you can simply flip the coin. The very things that give you disease, that wreck your nervous system, that make you destroy yourself with autoimmune conditions and excuses to be complacent and suffer and do nothing about it. If you flip that coin, there it is. There's you multiplying the coins. There's you bearing fruit. Because you can see something that's lacking. If you can see something that's lacking here, that means you've been given what it takes to be the light unto it. And if you don't do so, what you do not bring out from within you will destroy you. If you bring out that which is within you, it'll save you. If you do not bring out that which is within you, it will destroy you. Gospel of Thomas, words of Yeshua, esoteric truth. Hunted, burnt, tortured off the planet as much as possible, but these remnants remain for a reason, and they show up when some people are ready to hear them and use them. Of course, they were in the ether the whole time for us weirdo mystics, but some of it's even in writing. So you really don't even have an excuse to say it doesn't exist or these things aren't true, if you're being honest with yourself. The truth is, all this lack, all this pain, all this injustice, whatever it is that bothers you so much, it's really rocked you and made you hopeless. You are doing the exact opposite with it of what you came to do. Now, the good news is that is a profoundly simple equation. There's nothing complex about it. That's the good news. If you can see what it is makes you so hopeless, then you know what you're here for. And there's many things you'll be here for, but whatever it is that you're currently using as your excuse to remain in chains, to remain a slave, It's easier just to cut stones in Egypt than to go out into the desert and trust God and eat manna and become free people and stop worshiping golden calves. Okay, so it's easier to be hopeless, no kidding. All those people you're judging, humanity's so hopeless, they're just doing what you're doing. That's why. Your spirit is not amused by being a slave because that's not its nature. That's not the nature of consciousness. And as the spirit loses interest in an incarnation, it allows disease to manifest, to start killing the body. Usually it'll give you some time in case you want to reverse the process, in case you want to dig deep enough to start reverse engineering what you've been abiding so far and going along with. But make no mistake, your spirit knows it's eternal. And if it calculates that you really have thrown in the towel in this incarnation, it creates the exit. In some cases, that's a car crash because it knows you're done and it gets you out fast. In other cases, it's some long chronic disorder. It's giving you a mercy. It's giving you time, the illusion of time. That struggle, that strain, the very thing you're feeding that's giving you the disease, it's giving you chance after chance, second after second, breath after breath to recognize what you're doing. Not what somebody else is doing to you, what you're doing with your own creative power because of what you've chosen to entertain within you. Or in many cases, you didn't choose it, because until you become conscious enough, you don't make your own choices about this. You're born into a world where when you're a child, you have no filters, you absorb whatever's around you. And like I constantly tell people, and most don't hear me yet, you're not given healthy philosophies of life in this world. That is not an excuse to be a victim. That is an opportunity to recognize a great opportunity. That's what that is. In the light is infinite wisdom and power, and in the darkness is depravity and lack thereof. Which do you like entertaining within your temple? Right now, it may be your comfort zone to just hide in an apartment somewhere and say, oh, the world's hopeless, nothing I can do. But as the diseases pile up in your body because of what you're doing to your flesh, using your consciousness this way, it's going to get very, very uncomfortable. And eventually you'll be desperate and miserable. And if your spirit determines you're not going to make the cut, you're not going to wise up and do anything about this, you're not going to take up the courage or anything, it'll just take you out of this incarnation because you threw in the towel a while ago. Many of you, even at a very young age right now, have already thrown in the towel. But by the mercy of your own spirit, you're being given a chance. There are road signs in your life. This is one of them. Wake up. Snap out of the trance. You will really regret that you buried your coin and gave up the opportunity that you lined up, that you couldn't wait to get here for, because that's who you really are. That's what you really are. And then you came down here and bought the inverted lie about everything and started suffering hopelessness and contributing to hopelessness, which increases the suffering of hopelessness and blindness of others. Yeah, bro, but like other people, they're all contributing to my hopelessness and it's just so overwhelming. Yeah, that's nice. That's a narrative. Feel free to change it when you're ready. See, any ego can justify its own complacency with evil, or its complacency or apathy or whatever it is. And they do. Egos justify their own sins. Whatever their mistakes are that they've given into, whatever the weakness is that they're tolerating and abiding in themselves. Ego doesn't know any better. You're not supposed to judge it or destroy it. It's a human condition. If you destroy it, your incarnation's over. I hear people say a lot of stupid things about ego. But your higher self knows better. Higher self, for lack of better terms. Spirit. Your spirit knows all the great opportunities. And day by day it shows them to you, but the lights have gone dim in your eyes because you've been looking at everything through darkness instead of light. So your metaphorical inner eye is blind. All you see is a bunch of confusing, hallucinated excuses for why it's so hopeless, and it's not your fault. None of this is your fault, and all of this is your opportunity. When you're ready to access the strength of your spirit, you realize that you can take all the nonsense that you believe that's kept you in chains this far and literally just reverse the polarity. Because the darkness is lying really hard at you, and all it's doing is telling you the opposite of the truth. Therefore, when you're ready, take up your cross or whatever you want to call it, you know what the truth is. Flip the polarity. Flip it around. Turn it over. On one side of the coin, the sun is shining bright, filled with infinite information, wisdom, and creativity and life force. On the other side, there's a shadow devoid of all these things. Humanity's cuddled together in the darkness of that shadow, blinded by it, not seeing each other, saying it's all y'all making life hopeless. You are pointing a finger at yourself. To judge is to judge oneself. Whatever it is you perceive in others that's the problem, that is you telling yourself something about yourself that you're not ready to hear until you are, unless you are. Get a little angry at it as it helps and say, yes, I am ready to hear it. Go ahead. Anger is a gift when used wisely. Would you like to sit on your hands and cower through an experience that you signed up for, knowing full well you could be the light into this world? Would you like to be embarrassed how easily you were duped out of an incarnation, as many people are? Would you like to use family or environment or culture or the whole world or a bunch of imaginary cosmic conspiracies working against you or whatever else you can to justify embarrassing yourself that way and disappointing yourself that way? Because when you get to the other side, you'll be forced or allowed, depending on how you look at it, to see the clarity in all of this, of what you did when you buried your coin. Parable of the coins. What does it mean to bury your coin? That's what you're doing. The hopelessness excuse. It's too hard. I can't fix it. Life's scary. God's scary. People are scary. Everybody's doomed. It's pointless. It's hopeless. Whichever meaningless, helpless, useless part of the problem philosophy you're entertaining inside. What does it say in that parable? What did Yeshua say? He said, that coin will be given to someone who takes coins and makes them grow. That means that the very things your spirit signed up for, the opportunities for growth that it lined up and shot to this earth at much faster than light speed, with incredible intention and clarity about all the great opportunity, it's going to be given to somebody else who is multiplying their coins, who is bearing fruit, who is expanding consciousness in the light instead of shrinking in the darkness and shriveling and distorting. Young males especially will complain about lacks of rite of passage. Your whole life is a rite of passage that you haven't picked up yet. You're running from it. You're hiding from it. You're making excuses not to do anything with it. That's your coin. So go figure out where you buried it and dig it up and start doing something with it. Multiply it. That's what you came for. This interface, this world of, everybody's so lost and everything's so negative and everything's so broken. That's your grand opportunity. That is infinite places all around you for your spirit to assert itself and bear light into the darkness. How can a light grow if there isn't darkness to grow in? When you look out at a beautiful star that shines brighter than the others, if there wasn't darkness around it, would you even see it? It couldn't shine. You couldn't tell which star is bigger and more developed and absorbed more matter and gas than the others, and even changed its color spectrum. It would all be meaningless. Where you come from, everything is infinite light and perfect. And you were excited to challenge yourself in this dualistic realm of darkness. And then you got here and you identified with the darkness and the weakness. And you became the problem, projecting that everybody else is the problem, or humanity as a whole is the problem, or creation's a problem. Everything's a problem. Everything's so sad. And you keep feeding the wrong wolf. You just keep watching the so-called news and your broken philosophies and your broken religions, handcuffing yourselves, making your own spirit disappointed and dismal and bored and frustrated. Your spirit will never be apathetic and dead. It'll never identify with the things your ego is making up as excuses not to live the life you came to live. It'll never agree. It'll give you chance after chance to repent of it and wake up and go the other way and do some of what you came here for so you get something out of this. But hopelessness philosophy means you went through the pain and struggle and confusion of birth and diaper rash and crappy beliefs and trauma and all these other things and then death for nothing. For nothing. That's what you did to yourself. That's what you did to your own spirit. When that truly hits you, when you're stripped away of the physical illusions of the dullness of the consciousness of the human body, and the full gravity of that hits you, it's much, much bigger than I have words for. If you wonder why things are so heavy duty and painful and there's so much suffering and so much and all this and that, again, flip the coin. Would this experience even be significant if it was some wimpy, shallow video game that didn't even take you out of your comfort zone? What would be the point? Do you really think you can grow? Do you really think your spirit can expand its light in some easy, comfortable situation? You would not have incarnated if you wanted to stay where things are perfect. You wanted this, and your spirit still does. Once you start identifying with that, if you actually do, you have figured out how to rise above your own ego and tap into what you really are. But your ego doesn't want it, because your ego can't do that. Your ego is mortal and doomed to death and thereby insane by default, and it wants to remain comfortable and delusionary and try to reduce its own suffering as it walks into its own grave. Is that good enough for you to identify with that illusion and suffer the misery of birth and death for nothing? See, it's all suffering. When you look at it from the hopeless side of things, that the darkness, the unconscious, miserable, distorted darkness, squirming and writhing in its spiritual ignorance wants you to look at it from, what are you doing to yourself? And what are you doing to your other selves out there by contributing to this? Because they're all saying the same thing. That you're helpless and hopeless, humanity. When you look into that mirror and say, oh, the plight of the world and humans, blah, 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 you're doing what you're judging. And you have a choice. Would you like to be some of the earlier fruits on the tree that shows others how to bloom? Or would you like to rot as a seed that never bloomed at all? That never even bothered to sprout forth? That threw in the towel before it did anything? It destroys your cellular biology. It destroys your nervous system and your psychology. It destroys the few things humans are aware of currently. And it destroys greater opportunities that they're not. Ironically, when you're in the darkness, this whole message probably just sounds like pain and misery and too heavy. I don't like it. I'm going to go distract myself with something else hopeless so I don't have to hear this. Okay. But every time you choose the weakness of the darkness, it's only going to get heavier and worse. And the pile of regrets you're going to face when you review this life is only getting bigger. And you can reverse all of that. You can even do it today. Not by saying some magic little code of words, but by recognizing that if you're looking around the world saying, oh, it's so hopeless. And if you see something more specific, oh, I'm ruined because I didn't have a good father figure. Okay. What do you perceive a good father figure to be? Because the world needs it. Why don't you be it? Then you're coming from the source. Then you're being what you are. Then you're a conduit of the light of the infinite creator and source of life, who is more than ready to be that through you, but won't force it. It has to be you that steps into that with your free will. The darkness doesn't care about your free will. It's going to violate it every way it can. But there would be no point in the light violating your free will. You would never grow spiritually. You would never become better companions or consciousnesses in the scheme of eternity interacting with the Great One. It would defeat the purpose. So the light patiently waits while billions of lives pass through and bury their coin. So how many coins are given to those that are willing? How many coins are given to those that suffer so much they say, you know what? Rather than just saying, oh, it's hopeless because I've suffered too much. How about this, Spirit? How do we make it worth it, all this suffering? There must be a way. There is. You become what you perceive yourself as suffering for lack thereof in this world. What you perceive others as suffering for lack thereof in this world. Or the solution to what people have too much of in this world. Worldly pursuits that are useless and just cause suffering. Whatever it is, whatever you see. While the darkness has you doing one thing with whatever your eyes see, the light would have you doing another thing, wouldn't it? The darkness has most of you doing nothing. Because you're too nice, you're too kind in nature, and you haven't sold out to the depraved, selfish, greedy, ravenous take. Now, some of you have. You need to hear this even more. You're not just burying your coin, you're digging a really deep, dark grave into a terrifying place. But what is it to be lukewarm and bury your coin? Your ego will feel shame like a dog and curl its tail between its legs and, oh, yeah, you're probably right. That's pathetic. One more reason to hate myself and judge myself and make weird comparisons to things that are irrelevant and make myself feel bad. No. The Spirit will do the opposite. You're alive, you're breathing, are you ready? Because I can give you countless opportunities starting right now. Start doing what you came for, to start being the light. Be the light unto the darkness. Because complaining about the darkness that you're a participant in creating is really embarrassing if you knew who you were and what you are. So if you really want to, go ahead and do so. Rise up into the point of higher consciousness of what your spirit is and quit wasting this incarnation. Because that's all that is. Now, most people hear this and go, well, but how, but this, but that, but I got all these questions. Well, then you're not ready. Your spirit already knows how. It always did. You're not looking for it and you're not finding it and you're not seeking it. You're still looking down into the darkness, grappling around in there saying, where's the answers and how do I do it? You're still looking the wrong direction. Look inward, look upward. These are metaphors, by the way. I don't, a lot of people think, oh, give me a tangible practice. Tell me which direction to bow how many times to do rituals. No, nonsense. You want to waste your life on rituals? Why not just build an AI robot to do it for you? Because that's how useful rituals are. They're empty. Are you ready to encounter your own spirit? Perhaps become it instead of running from it? Can you imagine for a second how delusionary it is that most human beings are terrified of their own spirit because they don't know themselves? Terrified of what you really are. You know why? Because it's so powerful. And it seems so alien to you. Because you became completely encased in the darkness of the egotistical nonsense version of yourself that the world gave you. People like to complain, oh, the world, it's so big and bad and everybody's did all this mean stuff and lied to me. Fine. Okay, whanny, whanny, boo-boo. Now crawl out of the cradle and use it. That was the point. The light will always use the nonsense the darkness does to accelerate its own journey and to do more good. That's what higher consciousness is. And the darkness will always take what could have been great and deprave it and twist it and distort it and play victim to it and make victims out of it and victimize itself and others with it. Because that's all distortion of truth and depravity and non-truth can do. If you say you don't like suffering, I understand. Sure, no one does. Now, there's suffering for a righteous cause that your spirit is strong and alive for, and you can go through things that others can't understand how you can go through because you're coming from spirit. And then there's all the pointless, whiny, grown-ass, human being, diaper rash, spiritual, whanny, boo-boo me, bury my coin and complain and participate in evil suffering. That's all in vain. So if you're in a place that causes discomfort by default, why not make it worth it? If you're going to experience things that make you uncomfortable, either way, would you like to be doing it from a place of light, where you appreciate the challenge, where you appreciate what you endure, where you appreciate that you can handle more pain and suffering with grace because you have a power others don't understand? Or would you rather just hide from as much pain as you can, shrink as small as you can, and live as petty and small and weak and scared and shadowy of a life as you possibly can, and then turn that in your life review? When you face your own spirit about this, when you lived your life in the delusion of ego, you buried your coin and you pass over, you're going to be scared of yourself when you move toward that light review, that life review. Light review, life review, kind of the same thing. There it is. There it is. You can keep entertaining the darkness and being small and making excuses for it, and you can regret it greatly because it's really foolish. It's an absolute waste of what you are and your potential. You were easily talked out of everything you came here for by the very conditions you set up for yourself to awaken it in you, by the way. Or you can use them. You can get on the other side of that coin, step into the light, and use it with laser sharp creativity to make a difference. And whatever difference you do or don't make in this world, don't worry about that. The world's going to distort the light anyway. It always does. The greatest one that ever walked among us has had his teachings in life twisted hideously. If that can happen to him, it can happen to you and me, and it will. Don't worry about your work. Don't worry about what those in darkness and ignorance twist the meaning of your life into so that they can remain in darkness. This is your investment. This is your opportunity. This is your chance to grow in the light. So when you return to where the light comes from, you're more of a light. You have more consciousness. If you are a father and you have babies, children at some point, you love them and you adore them. But how much can you actually interrelate to a baby? Now, oftentimes mothers want to keep them as babies because mothers are nurturing and they like that stage, and I understand that. But generally, as a man, you're kind of looking forward to the point where they grow up enough you can start to share in some things and do some things and build some things together. Do you think it's really any different for your source except infinitely magnified bigger than that? So what are you doing down here shrinking at things you could have overcome? So a slimy metaphorical snake comes along and says, no, you can't. Everything's hopeless. Just cower and be small and blame somebody else or yourself and just, try to minimize the suffering of the towel you've thrown in and the life you've given up on that you came to die for nothing. To live and die for nothing. What in the world, humanity? What are you doing to yourselves? People say, I want more strength. I want more discipline. I want more creativity. Stop wanting for things and step up into what you actually are. And you want for none of those things. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven. What does that mean? It means light up your own DNA inside with the source you come from, that you were meant to anyway. Instead of disaligning all the mirrors and crystals and putting a bunch of gunk in there and making excuses that nothing works because the world told you to, do the opposite of what this world tells you to. And I got a lecture the other day from some guy, dude, I think you're being negative when you say the world is negative. There are nice people. I was talking about root philosophy of life. I wasn't talking anything about whether there are or aren't nice people. Most of you are nice people. You're missing the point. Your root philosophy of life has you handcuffed into wasting this incarnation. And when I say the world, I'm not talking about this natural world of beauty around me. I'm not talking about any of the natural laws that come from anything true. I'm talking about what mankind calls the world. I'm talking about the systems of consciousness that slay your opportunity to do any of the things you came here for because you allow them to. The light is infinitely stronger than the darkness, but you give it up due to deception. And then you say, I'm weak, I can't. Okay, you're lying to yourself, and now you have to live in that lie, and it hurts. So what do? Numb yourself and go less conscious? Yes. Now you're just a blue pill matrix generator for other people's suffering, and you're complacent unconsciousness. These are all great metaphors for anybody with the eyes to see, the ears to hear, a heart that can perceive ultimately. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of mental masturbation. I don't care how many philosophies you absorb and memorize. If you're still living your life this way, what good have they done you? Intellectual isn't enough. The head of a human is limited and foolish and controllable and misguided at best. It's like a power tool. Do you think a carpenter builds the house, or do you think that the skill saw builds the house? If you're going to build the house of a life worth living, where you bared fruit, expanded upon the coins of gold value that you were given, are you going to do it, or is the power tool going to do it? Are you going to play around in your brain? You're going to play with a measuring tape and the pencil forever? Where's the carpenter? Where's the spirit? Where's the conscious part of you that came here to build something? That came here to build a grander accumulation of consciousness within yourself by practicing it in the darkness. Again, let's use the metaphor of physical strength, since some of you here actually understand and appreciate that. Can you get stronger without resistance? Or if you sit around saying, oh, it's not worth trying, what happens to your body? It decays into garbage and falls apart. From sitting still and trying not to break a sweat because you're lazy and you think that avoiding discomfort is the answer to things, eventually you'll be in so much pain you won't believe it because you're disintegrating, because you turn this into garbage. Same for your life. If the light's going to expand, it has to be enclosed in darkness so it can expand, reach out, create a bigger aura of light. That's what you're here to do. So the next time you're looking at something going, gee, that makes me feel so hopeless, I challenge you to ask your spirit what it sees. Gee, I see darkness that I can shine light into. I see where I can grow. I see what this world's missing. I see what my fellow lost, well-meaning, but currently defeated by illusion, human beings are looking for. I at least see this. Let me be it. Be it so, Creator. Through me live it. I trust you to do so. Boom. Now you're going somewhere. Now you're doing something. Now you're actually gaining some of what you came into this life to gain. And you're actually making it easier for others to do so. The collective energy field of hopelessness. What in the world are we all doing to each other, humanity, with that nonsense? Yeah, but it's hard, bro, because like my family doesn't understand. No kidding. Who are my brothers and my sisters? Those that hear these things and do them, as Yeshua said. I don't care where you were born or who you were born around. You set it up to challenge you with the very things you came here to be a light unto. There's many sequences in your life where things are seemingly thrust upon you, and when you live in low consciousness, i.e. the karmic path, you don't understand why anything happens to you. Why do these things happen to me? Why do these things happen to those people? Why? Because you're blind. You're flying blind. If you want to step up onto a miraculous timeline for your life, you have to do it through your spirit, not your ego. Your ego can't. And then you live the dharmic path where you manifest miracles everywhere you go. Some of you will bear greater fruit than I, said Yeshua. Why aren't we, humanity? Because the Romans turned that into a stupid blood sacrifice? I don't care. Your spirit knows better. When will you quit tolerating the measly, pathetic, ugly, lying darkness, exaggerating its power, deceiving you? When will you quit entertaining it and fueling it, and letting your light be turned into darkness? When will you take on more light, more photons, and become it, and expand and reach out further, and light more up so others can see it, or even so you can see it? You want to see God or creation or things more? That's how. It's not by buying some guru's book or doing rituals. It's when you get tired of the nonsense you've been wasting your life on, and your ego surrenders to your spirit. No, I don't want to hear it. Spirit. Some people fear it. Most y'all won't go near it. Yeah, people are terrified of it. What you're calling people. Illusionary life, ego level consciousness. When you're done, when you've actually had enough, playing in that mud puddle, you'll be ready to access the light and be what you came to be. And until then, you'll complain and help keep yourself and others down. And you will regret it when your life's over if that's what you did with it. Like Yeshua gave plenty of warnings about, you'll regret that. You are here to bear fruit at a miraculous level. That's what you came for. Anything less is not satisfactory to your spirit. That's the truth. I know, most of you can't even begin to actually believe that. You spent your whole life entertaining how small you are, making yourselves feel lonely and lost in darkness, even though you're surrounded by others in darkness and none of you can even see each other anymore. You're all just projecting blindly. When you've had enough, you've had enough. People talk about being a spiritual warrior. Well, there it is. You can cower in your comfort zone of chains and give up your life and bury your coin like a coward. Or you can be what it is you say needs to be here that's missing. Otherwise, who are you to say? How can you sit around and say, oh, the world's like this? There's not enough love. There's not enough wisdom. There's not enough courage. There's not enough whatever you're saying there's not enough of. Meanwhile, while you're sitting there saying that, you're being the problem. Your spirit knows this. If you're disconnected from your heart center, you don't know your own spirits. You might believe me. It might sound reasonable enough, but you can't do anything with it. Or you might disagree if your ego takes offense because you got a bunch of, selfish motives and you don't want to hear the truth. But if you hear this and recognize it, do it, be it. You can. If there's any recognition here, it's because you have the ears to hear and the eyes to see something. Look out into that world that you've been making excuses, how hopeless it is. And every one of those things you were making excuses about, understand there's your investment. What you say is missing there, instead of complaining that it's not there for you, become it. Become the source. Then you'll know you're part of the one. This is how. This is how you earn that awareness, humanity. This is what you've been talked out of by your cults and your governments and your neighbors and all the complacency around you. You want to know you're one with the source? That's how. You become the source of what you perceive missing here in the darkness. If you can see the metaphorical darkness, that means you can see what's absent. That means you're meant to be able to be what's absent. When you're ready to be that light, be it. And then watch how weird everything gets when people try to make you something separate and different from them. And then a whole new stage of learning begins. Navigate it carefully. I got to get into that at another time. But first, we need some lanterns lit so there's something for the light to even talk about with the light. Because right now, the light's talking to the darkness, or the light went out and it's making excuses for itself. But that's not what you really are. That's a shadow of what you are. When you're ready to be what you are, be one with the source, be what you keep saying is missing, be what you've been complaining about not being there for you your whole life. That's the simple answer, and it's the simple truth. I love y'all. I really, really do, and I believe in y'all. That's why I make the effort. Say, Creator, trust it's in the best interest for all involved. And for those that aren't open to this, whatever, they'll filter themselves out. These are seeds of light scattered out there for those that have enough fertile soil to do something with it and bear some fruit and invest their coins wisely and grow them. That's what you came here for. Make it worth it. That's eternal. That's eternal treasure. If the world makes you feel hopeless, good. Because all the crap being sold you in this world is pointless. Material reality, sure, you have to deal with it while you're here. And tangibly dealing with it well is good. But it doesn't excite your spirit because it's temporary nonsense and it's nothing like the realm you come from. You came here to be the light, not to complain about the lack of it. I've hammered that point from a lot of directions now. I love you guys. For some reason in my mind, I see a blacksmith's hammer hitting something that's being forged and sparks coming off it. There's light under that hammer on that impact point. There it is. I hope you feel it. Cosmic spiritual shoulder punch for my fellow infinite spirits. I love y'all, whether you're ready for this or not, in the illusion of time, because it is you. And I know that. Maybe you're ready to know that. Over now for now.